My name is Dr. Donnie Khan. I'm a psychologist. I lived my whole childhood in the United States. In fact, I did my doctorate in the United States at Yeshiva University. I came to Israel. I've been here for about 25 years working as a psychologist. And for a little more than the past 20 years, I've been an EMDR therapist as well, moving through the ranks, becoming an accredited therapist, and then becoming a consultant, and eventually I'm now an EMDR Europe trainer. I'm the associate or deputy director of the EMDR Institute of Israel, which is why the director asked me to make sure that our roll up is behind here so I could show off. And awesome. one of my consultants asked me to please make sure that my fish tank is behind it also, because people like watching it. Anyway, I probably have more things I could say about myself, but you know, look on the internet, you'll find me.
Right. And I can tell you from experience, having had the good fortune to spend a lot of time with Donnie in Israel, wonderful collaborator, very coffee. Donnie has the best coffee machine in the world, and which is a very good reason to go visit. But
so anybody who's on this is welcome to visit me in Israel over a cup of coffee. We could talk about anything, and I can make you tea as well if you don't like coffee.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Erin.
Hi, my name's Erin. And yeah, it's been really great to meet Donnie and to learn about his coffee, which I very much intend to have when I get to Israel. I'm going to take you up on that, so watch out. And as the mother of a 2-year-old, I need that coffee, especially right now during coronavirus, this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm a LCSW, opened a private practice right before actually all of this happened, and have been working in the perinatal mental health field for about 6 years. Mara, I had been working with mood and anxiety disorders and wanted to get more training in the trauma that I was seeing happening in this population. And so was so lucky to get connected with Mara and go through her first perinatal EMDR training here in Chicago. And since then, it's just been, snowball into this world and collaborating with brilliant people and just trying to put our heads together to help, families right now who are really struggling. So it's been an honor to do this, and I'm really excited to share with everybody what we have.
It's fabulous to have you here, and I am thrilled. So yes, so let me introduce myself, and I'm trying to see if I can get the screen.
You want the screen back?
To do what it needs to do. No, I think
we're
good.
Do you want the screen back?
There we are. Nope, we're good.
Oh, you're good.
We're good. I just want to introduce myself.
I'm going to be back in a second. I realize I don't have my reading glasses. So I'll be back in half a second. So introduce yourself.
Okay, great. So for those who have, welcome, everybody welcome as you keep flowing in. My name is Mara Tesler-Stein, and I'm a clinical psychologist in Chicago. Actually did my undergrad in Israel, so have that connection as well. And I am a specialist in perinatal mental health, perinatal trauma, and in EMDR. And so I'm also the mom of preemie twins who are now adults living in Israel, in fact, and a younger child. And so my connection to the trauma and to the transition and to the disruptions and ruptures that can happen in the perinatal period goes back quite a while. And so when I took Gary Quinn's webinar, Gary, who developed the self-care procedure for coronavirus, I thought, wow, this could be incredibly helpful to the perinatal population. And yet we have some unique qualities to the ways in which we're worrying about what's happening here. And so we began the adaptation. So let me tell you a bit about what we're going to be doing here this morning. I'm going to start, Donnie is going to start by giving some background so that you understand the framework in general about what this procedure is, what it's standing on. Some people here are trained in EMDR, some people here are not. You do not need to have an EMDR background to use this procedure and for it to be effective. Then I'm going to go through the procedure, walk you through it. We'll do this side by side. I'll share my screen and you can see I did send an email to everybody registered with the materials, our most recent update. And I mean, literally hour by hour, it continues to be modified and changed. And we welcome feedback from all of you as you use it. Just as we've used it, we realized, ooh, we could tweak here, we could tweak there to make it smoother, to make it more applicable. So please do share that feedback with us as well as you apply it. We'll walk everybody through it. And then Erin we are going to ask for a volunteer, and Erin is going to do a demo so that you can see it in action. And then we'll have a little bit of time for questions before we split into our breakout rooms. And there'll be probably about 3 people to a room, more or less. And everybody can have a turn practicing. And then we will be available for questions that come up. This is a stabilization resourcing procedure. So no matter how you do it, ultimately, even if you trip up a little bit as you're practicing, it's a very robust intervention. So, and then we'll come back after practicing for more questions. And of course, we will continue to be available as you apply this for feedback, for stories, for input, as you use it. And we hope that it's helpful. So, Donnie, are you back?
I'm here. I'm here.
All right, let's go.
Glasses and everything. Okay.
Glasses and everything.
So, yeah. Okay. So I want to make just a point that the procedure as it has been set up is a kind of procedure that you really can use even if you have not been trained in EMDR. To a certain extent, it probably could even be done by non-mental health professionals, although we're really asking mental health professionals to use it, because if something does, which we haven't seen anything go wrong, even though probably thousands and thousands of people have used this procedure already, and we've been getting feedback that's been all positive, and we have not seen any kind of dangers as yet. But nevertheless, because this is not a researched procedure, we don't have the evidence yet from good controlled research. We really would prefer that it's only mental health professionals using it, so that if something, God forbid, does go wrong, we have people who actually know how to work with somebody who might be having an abreaction or anything else where that might be very difficult. Anyway, as you see on the cover screen over here, that this is a procedure that has been adapted from Dr. Gary Quinn, who is my teacher, mentor, and very good friend. And we've been working together for about 20 years now. And he is creative, brilliant, and really one of the top people in the world in EMDR. And he's constantly thinking of new things that he might be able to do. Now, during coronavirus, we have some very specific types of challenges. And part of the reason why we decided to put this procedure out there is because, just like with some of the medications that are out there, that we're trying even without some of the normal procedures that we'd go through for testing them, while we're in this kind of a situation, we're willing to try things that are a little bit more experimental, because people need it. Thus, there is a great need out there. So what I'm going to go through right now is just a little bit of an introduction. People who are my students would probably recognize this picture. This is not teaching EMDR, but it is introducing some of the thinking that EMDR has of how we look at pathology, at issues, at whatever's going on. This is how we look at and understand the human mind, and where it gets stuck and where things go well, and how we step in to try to help. And then at the end, I'll talk about how this specific procedure is coming in to do its work. So one of the basic things that we understand about how we store information, that information comes in, and sometimes it is adaptive and sometimes it's maladaptive. The adaptive information is information that's been worked through, and whenever we think about it, it makes us feel usually pretty good about ourselves. It helps with self-esteem. It helps with feeling basic sense of safety. It helps us feel like we have some choices in how to be able to navigate the world we live in. There are some memories that these memories themselves remain encapsulated in time and space. So we're calling it trauma, but that's a very broad definition of the word trauma, because we're talking about any memory that when you bring it up and think about it, it's activating in the here and now. As a result of having, and some of those are, by the way, adaptive. So for instance, not going near flame. We might have one time very early in our childhood had a parent scream at us when we reached our hand toward a flame, and that way of being gets stuck inside, that very few of us see a building going up in flames and say, oh, I'd like to go in there and see what that's like. So we have a very good sense of that initial step back. You know, you get pushed toward the street, you jump back, and even if there's no cars coming. Those are adaptive things that are stuck in trauma time space. When something does not need to be there, that's when we call it trauma. Some of the things that are in there, as we said, some of the things are actually quite adaptive. Some of them are less adaptive. Now, when things happen in the here and now, we call them triggers. So you could have a trigger that will trigger a resource. Okay, when something triggers a resource, it's reminiscent of things that we've been successful in life, and therefore we're able to deal with it. When something triggers trauma or trauma time space, it's something that's reminiscent of things that are stuck in these encapsulated forms. And of course, we also have future challenging events that we don't know how we're going to deal with them. It depends how we are when we get to that point in time. So basically what we end up having in EMDR therapy, then this is an introduction to an introduction to an introduction. We're not really going into EMDR therapy right now. But EMDR therapy in its most standard model starts off with treating past memories, moves into after the past memories are cleared out, and I'm not really talking a lot about how we do that, just that this is the way of thinking about the model of EMDR. When we get to the present triggers, when these things are cleared out, it's much easier to clear out the kinds of events that happen in the here and now. After that's done, we tend to try to strengthen things for the future. Now, the experience of having the coronavirus sets us into an interesting dilemma, because some of the fears that are being brought up are actually somewhat realistic. There is triggers that are like, don't jump into a burning building. Now, some people are suffering from too much anxiety, so it's not serving them well, even though what it's triggering is something that might even be a healthy trigger. And as we know also in the perinatal phase, that there's all kinds of things going on hormonally that set us up to be in that place, take care, and be in extra vigilance. So it's going to set us up in a place where we could experience far more anxiety than would be necessarily good for us. So while in regular EMDR therapy, when we're trying to do therapy, we're trying to rework the old memories. Here, we're not touching the old memories. We're not getting anywhere near them. In fact, if ever it comes up, we're directing the person away from that, because that's therapy. We're not doing therapy here. We're doing a stabilization procedure. And what we end up having is that the places where we're trying to treat are the current triggers, and also the visualization of the future events. That's where what we're trying to treat right now, because this is probably, for all the therapists here, is probably more appropriate to talk maybe about an adjustment disorder, because we're trying to adjust to a crazy situation. So I don't even know if it's a disorder, but it's an adjustment problem. So in the procedure that we're doing, what we're actually trying to do is somehow a little bit try to weaken the connection between the trauma trigger and the trauma time space, and at the same time try to create a bridge from the present trigger, the same way that you have normally a bridge of a trigger resource that it triggers resources. We basically want the same thing to happen with the current situation, bringing up and triggering more adaptive information. And also we want the future, the look toward the future, also triggering our abilities to be able to cope. Now, the one last thing that I'm going to say, just from a theory perspective of how we're trying to manage all of that, is one of the hallmarks of EMDR therapy is bilateral stimulation. Bilateral stimulation could happen in the form of moving your eyes back and forth from side to side. It could be from hearing sounds from left to right. It could be from tapping. It could be the therapist doing the tapping. It could be the client doing their own tapping. So as you'll see when we get into the procedure itself, it could be self-tapping like this, it could be self-tapping like this, but we're basically going to be doing a rapid bilateral stimulation. What we know from the EMDR model and from years of research and experience is that something about, and I'm not going to go into all the details of this right now, something about doing the bilateral stimulation helps the system process information and lead toward more of a sense of calm. And therefore, what we're going to be doing here, because we're not doing this therapy and we're not trying to deal with this stuff, we're going to be using the bilateral stimulation to bridge directly from the present trigger directly into and kind of flooding the system with adaptive information. Some of that adaptive information might already be available to the person, and some of it is adaptive information that we're handing them. They might not have known that. But either way, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bridge where there might be a gap right now because of the extreme situation. So that's pretty much all I had to say about just from a theoretical perspective and to understand what it is we're trying to do with this procedure. Okay.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Donnie.
So
let me say a little bit more about why we adapted this and how we've adapted this as we go through this. I am sorry, I don't know why this is doing this. One second here. That is not what I wanted. Oh, I know why. Okay, let me try this again, shall we? Okay. All right. So when we think about the perinatal period, hold on. When we think about the perinatal period, one of the things that's really, really clear is that we are already in the perinatal period in a highly vulnerable, more sort of open and receptive sort of state than people who are walking around day to day in their lives. The reason you're seeing me look all confused here is I'm having trouble finding, somehow my actual screen is not showing me what I need here.
are you trying to pull up the
Yes.
the protocol?
Oh, I know why. Hold on. No,
Okay.
it disappeared. It made itself go, it put itself away. So let me just open it up again. There we go. Now I can share it. Okay. So because women in the perinatal period are already in a state of heightened vulnerability, we really need to think about what those particular kinds of worries may be, and those particular kinds of vulnerabilities are likely to be for these clients that we are working with in our population.
And I would add just, Mara, because we were thinking, I mean, especially for birthing
yes,
identified mothers,
correct,
women-identified mothers, but also for new partners, non-binary folks, and also birthing people who don't identify as women are included in who this is targeted for.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for adding that. We all know that many families who are anticipating birth at this point are feeling even more heightened anxiety because of all of the protocols and procedures that are put in place for safety. And we don't have any real evidence about what actually protects families, what protects babies, should babies be separated from families, all of this kind of stuff that's coming up. We certainly have families who were in the NICU with their babies or in the aftermath of NICU when coronavirus hit. We have families birthing now with medically complicated situations for the birthing mother, for babies. So all of this vulnerability is here. And so we have incorporated those sorts of concerns into our clinical indications and also into how we do the procedure. So the original self-care procedure, which by the way, you will be able to use with the non-perinatal population as well. So consider this is like bonus content woven into the original foundational self-care procedure. So for people who are finding themselves really immersed in these sorts of fears that come out as thoughts and concerns, I'm afraid I might get the virus. I'm afraid I have it. I believe I've infected other people. everything in my life is falling apart. I'm not going to have any money. I'm not going to have a job. I'm alone. I'm isolated. These kinds of concerns. For the perinatal population, we would add for families anticipating a birth, I'm afraid I'm going to be separated from my baby. I'm afraid I'll die from COVID and my baby won't have a mother, a parent. I'm afraid I gave my baby COVID. I'm afraid I'm going to be all alone when I give birth. I'm afraid that I might get COVID during delivery or in the NICU, or my baby might get it. And then for those who are home with a new baby or older children or both, like, I am just failing at all the things. I cannot do this. This pandemic has just stripped away any capacities that I may have felt that I had or that I've worked so hard for. I think so many of us, when this first started, were thinking about all of our clients in the postpartum period with postpartum mood and anxiety disorders, who we like, get out of the house, go see people, go do the things. And we, got them moving and got them out. Now we're like, stay home, don't see people, don't touch anything. So all of those games, and then feeling like, how on earth am I supposed to have these? I already had 2 jobs or 3 jobs. Now I've got 4 jobs, feeling like a failure because of the pandemic. This is key. Okay. So let's go over the basic concepts and terms that will be coming up as we go through the procedure. So negative thoughts and beliefs lead to strong negative emotional states, okay, often with negative emotion. We've divided, and this starts with the foundational protocol. We have 2 major dimensions of these kinds of thoughts. They fall into 2 buckets, either around safety choices and power, or responsibility, shame, and guilt. And you're going to understand much more about this as we go through those 2 categories. But have in mind that we've got type 1 and type 2 negative thoughts and beliefs that lead to these negative emotions. Sometimes it's actually the negative emotions that then are expressed in those negative thoughts. The perinatal piece adds, and this is an organizational concept. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. So use this if this is helpful to you. But it's a way to organize what happens in particular in the perinatal period that are particular challenges developmentally for families. And in the work that Dr. Debbie Davis and I did over the years, researching the 2 books that we wrote for parents of premature babies and for parents who went through the NICU for any reason, what we saw over and over again is that the 3 core tasks that families face in this period are developing parental identity, and identity as parent to this baby. So even if you have older children, parenting this baby is always different. But if you've had a complicated pregnancy, if the baby has complications, if there's complications in the postpartum period, that developmental phase has its own unique qualities on top of the regular developmental phase. Secondly, managing intense feelings, which do connect right back to our type 1 and type 2 kinds of emotions and thoughts, but that are particular to what's going on in this phase. The kind of fear, the things that you're afraid of, the things that you're preoccupied with, the kinds of sadness, things like that are going to be very particular to what's happening with this baby in your family. And then finally, managing relationships, including attachment, which is one of the primary foundational pieces that we think about when we think about attachment, or think about relationships in the perinatal period and postpartum, and then certainly with your partner, with extended family, out in the world, in the environment. Okay. Now, positive thoughts. So we hear all the time, and I'm sure we've all seen on social media all kinds of affirmations, positive thinking, and so forth. Positive thoughts are, as you saw in the images that Donnie shared, resources when they feel true. So one of the big challenges that we have as therapists of all kinds is how do we help people to take on board positive beliefs so that they don't just sound theoretical. Like, oh, well, yeah, that's nice. I feel that sometimes. I believe that sometimes. Or I used to believe that, but I don't believe that anymore. Or I don't believe that about myself. Positive thoughts ultimately are more adaptive. And so after we employ this procedure, what happens is that those positive thoughts feel more true. And as a result, also are evocative of positive feelings. So how do we do that? Well, the magic sauce, the secret sauce here is tapping or the alternating bilateral stimulation. And we've chosen tapping, and I believe that Gary chose tapping for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's simple and can be done for yourself. It can be self-applied. So in this procedure, we're using rapid, alternating, bilateral, tactile stimulation. So what do I mean? We are applying tactile stimulation, which means touch. We are alternating the touch, and we're alternating the touch on opposite sides of the body, and we're doing it fast, right? So sometimes I see people do this, right? That's not alternating. The alternating is important. Donnie, yes, please, and both of you, please jump in.
Right. Yeah, so one of the things that Gary does is when he's doing it on screen through Zoom or something like that, is he moves himself back from the screen so he could show the two possibilities.
Yes.
And he'll move the camera down, he'll do this, or this, and he'll give the person the opportunity to do whichever one feels more comfortable.
And we're going to do this also with the demo. And also there's a second document that I sent to you, and then I'm going to go over very quickly at the end of this, which has some photographs generously provided by a friend and colleague who is, I think, about 36 or 37 weeks pregnant now. And her daughter took pictures of her demonstrating all the different ways that one can apply this rapid BLS is the abbreviation that we use. So certainly one of the things that we can do when we're in the office back in the olden days before coronavirus, BC, as one of my daughters refers to it. Gabby. Right? Is that the therapist can, if comfortable, provide the tapping to the client. But of course, we're not going to be touching each other for a long time. So we definitely,
for a year and a half, right?
At least till we have a vaccine. So
2 years, okay.
Okay, so we're instructing the client in how to administer the tapping themselves. So you say you're going to do very quickly 1 or 2 passes per second, 60 to 120 passes per minute. Don't worry about counting. We're just giving that as a framework so that you understand what fast looks like. This is a pass. That's a pass, okay? That's rapid tapping, just like that.
And Mara, if you have a client who says in like a one sentence, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you making me do this tapping?
Yes. So here's what I tell people in just a metaphorical way, because that's how I think, is I say, we're planting seeds. And when we tap, we are giving those seeds fertilizer, water, and sun.
Yeah.
And that's really what it feels like. It gets the roots down, it makes those seeds sprout and blossom. And it's a neurobiological experience. We've got a lot of research backing that up for those who are interested.
I love that.
Yeah, that's what it always felt like to me anyway. And then finally, SUDS, which you guys may be familiar with from other work that you do, the subjective units of disturbance scale. So this is, and I tell people, you don't have a window in your forehead. So this is a way for us, for me, to know, are things shifting? And don't let people get too caught up in, oh no, what's the exact number? Certainly if you're working with a mom, let's say, who's got some OCD going on, is it exact? It doesn't matter. You can go percentage, you can just say big or small. We're really trying to get a sense of where things are at and if they are changing. And we will use the SUDS scale a few times along the way. And the way you ask it is, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is no disturbance or neutral, and 10 is the highest disturbance you can imagine, how disturbing are you feeling right now? And I said it the reverse way of how it's written here, but it doesn't matter. That is the foundational question.
I'm going to add one more thing about the tapping, because the question came up on the chat. Somebody said, isn't the fast tapping anxiety provoking? So first of all, by experience, we see it's not. That's not what's happening, especially the way that we're doing the procedure itself. For those of you who are at least level 2 trained EMDR therapists, then you know what a cognitive interweave is. So what we're basically using is we're doing constant application of cognitive interweaves while the fast tapping is going on. And what we find is that it just, as the repetition goes on and on and on, it sinks in and it sinks in and it sinks in.
Yes.
So that's
mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Dan.
Go ahead. Yeah. So the one more thing I did want to say about it is that from some of the research, especially of Ad de Jong in the Netherlands, that what seems to be very effective in the bilateral stimulation is the flooding of the working memory. So if we do it slow like this, it's not doing any flooding. But when you do like this, you're flooding it, especially with the application of positive cognitions over and over. So that seems to be, again, mechanism. Can we prove that mechanism is causing results? It's a theory. We can't be 100% sure, but we do have good, at least observational evidence that it seems to be doing something very good for people.
Right. And unlike in EMDR, where we are quiet and we're asking the client to just notice, that's actually, you'll see.
Right. Definitely not at all here. Not at all.
And in fact, I want to just introduce another metaphor that I use quite a lot as I'm describing this and see if this works for you. When we're working with meaning making and experience, we're always weaving, and we are helping our clients to weave. In this procedure, we are introducing threads of meaning and possibility to clients in such a way that they can consider whether to weave that in to their way of understanding and experiencing the world. And then the nervous system takes it on board, and it can shift the overall picture from, let's say, dark, spiky threads and fabric to softer, more nuanced kinds of fabric. Okay, so you have here a script and worksheet, which is meant to be used every time you do this with clients. So you have a digital copy. If you didn't get one, let me know afterwards. Duplicate it, write on it, use it. Do not need to memorize this. Don't even try. Why? Write it down. Okay, so it's a script and a worksheet. You can read things directly from here. It will work. So first of all, you're going to introduce yourself. Ask them in general, what are you worrying about? What's happening? Okay.
Very brief. Very brief.
Don't let them go down the rabbit hole. Don't let them go down the rabbit hole. You're trying to get a sense of, in the here and now, what's their biggest worry or two, or the biggest preoccupation or two, and then move on. So here is a way to introduce the self-care procedure to the client. You, again, don't need to go into great detail, but this is a procedure that uses tapping. It's helped other people. I think it could be helpful here. Here are some ways that you can do it, and you can show them. When you tap on your shoulders, we call that the butterfly hug. Some people like to hook their fingers, their thumbs together. There's apparently great debate amongst EMDR trainers about how to do this. See what works. Some people like this. It hits them, it's a vagus kind of touch over here too. A vagal touch can be helpful for some people. It doesn't matter if they're more comfortable here, if they're more comfortable tapping arms, if they're more comfortable on tops of legs. I'm trying to give you the tops of my legs here. Okay, sorry, I'm not far back enough out. Some people even like sides of knees. It doesn't matter.
Mara, does this one work?
Yes, I think it would. But it needs to be self-applied, because otherwise then you get other negative thoughts, cognition, and also you might get punched. So,
just wondering.
But also, we're not touching people. Anyway, so so then you demonstrate, you show them, ask them what's more comfortable. Let them know that if at any point they want to stop, they should stop. Or if they want you to stop talking, which is what you're going to do soon, that they should put up their hand. They stop. Not about the stop talking. It's stop the procedure, take a break, check why. But when we're doing it, we're going to be flooding with the statements. We're not going to stop. Well, no, but if somebody's having a hard time or something. Absolutely, but then we stop everything. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Then we stop everything. We don't stop. Exactly. We don't just stop talking and let them keep going. Yes, thank you for that clarification. Yes, that's exactly what I meant. That you stop cold.
Stop is an absolute stop. Let's figure out what's going on,
exactly.
if and how to continue. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like pulling that emergency brake if you're on a train.
Right, right.
Okay, all right. So then you go in and assess what's going on specifically. You've gotten the general before, now we're gonna go specific. So when you're thinking about the concern that they told you just a few minutes ago with the coronavirus, what are your negative thoughts? Here, let me tell you what some types of thoughts might be. So first you show them, explain to them what the type 1 negative thoughts look like. And those type 1 thoughts, we call them, are associated with anxiety, helplessness, fear of the future, panic, isolation, anger. I can't handle it. I'm helpless. I'm not in control. And you say, are they like this? Or are they more like this? Or are they both? So type 2 negative thoughts are more about guilt, regret, inadequacy, shame. And here we've already started to weave in some examples from the perinatal period. I'm not important. I'm failing. I'm failing as a parent. I should have known better. So ask them, you're trying to get a sense from them, and people know very quickly, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, that one too. And so write it down and then ask them, when you say this thought, repeat it, what feelings are you feeling? And here are some of the feelings that might come up. And then write them down. So you're gonna first go through the type 1 feelings, get a sense of those. And then you're gonna say, and how about these? Are you feeling any in this category? Write them down. And then check the SUDS level as they're focusing on what they're experiencing. Please tell me how disturbed.
Go ahead. Finish that. Yeah.
How disturbed are you feeling now on a scale of 0 to 10? And then you're going to, as I said before, and then you're going to write that number down because that's our starting point. Donnie, yes.
So for all the EMDR therapists out there, please note that there was no check of the body. Please do not check the body here. We are staying out of that channel right now. The expectation is that there's going to be body activation. So asking about it is just bringing up something that is not going to be helpful here.
Right, and it's more likely to pull them into the past stuff, and we're actually trying to pull them
into deeper stuff, and especially at the end, you don't want to do a body scan because we're in a situation right now that actually does cause some degree of tension in order to be able to function.
Yeah.
So we're not expecting the body to be in this complete relaxed space. Some people might achieve that, but we're not expecting that, and asking about it just puts the target on it. And then we've caused ourselves more problems. So for all the EMDR therapists out there, please note that is on purpose.
Right. And someone said, good to know. So I'm guessing maybe that's something, we'll be revising this as, it's an evolving process, but that would maybe be something for us to note, since EMDR therapists would be likely to want to do that.
And because in the perinatal period, the somatic experience, the body sense is even more heightened.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So especially even those of us who use some somatic interweaves and stuff, just put those to the side for right now. Right. We're doing something different here. Okay. Yeah. So now here is the procedure. Be clear. This procedure is designed for use with the coronavirus, around issues around the coronavirus in the perinatal period. We are not looking for past traumas. If past traumas keep coming up, that's an indicator that they need either to move. You need to move into EMDR and other trauma-focused treatment, biologically based bottom-up treatment, or make a referral to someone who does that. We recommend EMDR. We like EMDR.
Really? As Johnny was saying, this is for people who are having this adjustment type disorder.
Right.
And there's a subset of people that we're working with in the perinatal period who have trauma that is being re-triggered by the coronavirus. And if they're struggling, if they're really going back to being flooded in this, where you're seeing it, that's an indication that it's probably, the trauma being triggered, and that's a whole nother thing.
Right. So it's diagnostic. If those other concerns are intruding, that helps you to know which way to go.
Right. So again, what we're doing is that if those things come up, we direct the person back to the here and now. We don't follow that. We direct them back. And if repeatedly directing them back to the here and now doesn't work, that is a very strong indicator that they're being flooded by something that is bigger than this procedure is designed to handle.
Exactly. Good. All right. So now you're going to see at the end of this document, this handout, we've developed a list of positive cognitions, positive beliefs that are tailored to the perinatal period. So you want to have that handy. Some people like to laminate things. Maybe you laminate it, have it available. All right. So what you're going to do to start, this is you now as therapist starting the procedure. This is our stabilization procedure, self-care procedure. So you say to the client, now start tapping. Okay. So they're going to be tapping. And while the client is tapping, we will repeat the positive cognitions that correspond to the category of the negative cognition that the client was struggling with. So we have our type 1 positive thoughts correspond to the type 1 negative thoughts that we've identified. So I want to highlight a couple of things. As the client is tapping, I, the clinician, am going to read through these sentences, in the list of these sentences, for a minute interval. And then at each minute, I'm going to say, let it go, take a breath, let it go. That's it. I'm not doing anything else, just giving them like a little breather, literally. And then going back to the same list and doing it again. And you're going to do that about 5 times. It's about 5 minutes of offering these threads, these positive threads. Okay. So as you can see, these are positive beliefs that have to do with control, choices, and so forth. Type 1, you can be in reasonable control of what you can be in control of. You can learn to deal with this. And here's a perinatal specific one. Attachment to your baby is flexible and resilient. You and your baby are connected no matter what happens. You can learn to have options within this framework. You are part of your baby's healthcare team. You can learn to manage this uncertainty involved in this pandemic, just as you've learned to do in your new role, or if they're not new, in your role as a parent. Okay. So you're going to go through this list. And of course, please feel free to tailor this to your particular client as appropriate to their situation, but you get the idea here of what we're going for. So you're going to do that 5 times in minute intervals with a breath at each minute interval. And then you're going to check SUDS on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is no disturbance or neutral and 10 is the highest disturbance. You can imagine how disturbing does it feel to you now. If the SUDS have dropped to less than 3, move on to closure. You don't even need to do the type 2 beliefs. Very often this will clear everything on its own. If the SUDS have dropped from, 8 to 4, then say, okay, now I'm going to say some new phrases, some additional phrases. Notice the ones that most apply to you. Go ahead and start tapping. And so then you go ahead and read these that are appropriate. You may also want to look at the type 2 list that we supplied and weave those in, add those in.
I would prefer not. I would prefer to separate it between type 1. To keep it separate. Finish type 1. If there's still something left, then move to type 2.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is to look at the type 2 section of that list. Because we didn't, so we have here, I'm just trying to see if we have perinatal.
Because everything here is still in type 1.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. That's right. We haven't moved into type 2 yet. No, I'm sorry, I made a mistake.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Right, no,
we're in the second round. We're in the second round after the first 5 minutes, right? You thought you had already moved on, right?
I thought
because it said go to because it said go to phase 5 to closure. So you thought we were already going to type 2. We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
So I'm here to tell you that if you did what I said, you didn't break
it. It doesn't matter.
But better to do it this way.
It works anyway.
When you talk to colleagues like this, you're like, oh yeah, whoops. So all this to say, this is a very robust protocol. Thank you, Donnie.
It's not a protocol, it's a procedure.
I'm sorry, procedure. Right. Procedure. So go ahead and read these. So this is round 2, slightly different, some of the same as before. Then you're going, go ahead, Don.
I was gonna say, you can almost imagine, I'm just imagining in my head, like saying each set in the box 5 times, or 5 times over. and then the let it go breath. It's like you're playing a soccer game and then you have a timeout, you get some water, you come back in. So there's going to be, if you need to, you've got 3 halves of the game of the type 1, but not everybody needs to get through all 3 in order to win the game, if that makes sense, to get down to a level of lower distress.
There you go. Yeah, that's great.
Now, one of the questions that came up was, what if people bring up body sensations or bring up other things? So I realized that we never wrote in here, but this is a good thing to keep in mind. First of all, we are not inviting associations. We are very, very directed over here. We are just driving forward and keeping the foot on the gas the whole time. However, so if somebody brings up an association to old memories, we bring them back. They bring up body sensations, we bring them back. The one exception to that is if somebody brings up an additional positive thought that really works for them, we're going to include that in the list now.
Yes.
Because it's their own empowering for them and helping them be able to function better. So now we include their words in those sentences.
And I think that we should keep a running list of thoughts that are adaptive that our clients are coming up with, especially the perinatal ones, because I think that would be a tremendous resource for all of us in the community. So please, I'll see about setting up a shared document that we can all add to. So you're going to do that second round of part 1, 5 1-minute increments with a breath in between. And then after that, you're going to again check your suds.
And Mara, someone had a good question of if in that, especially, and I've had this happen where in that breath, then the client wants to start talking, right? And processing. How do you handle that to get them back into?
So
you want to answer that? You take that.
Yeah, let me say what I would do. Like, I actually will often inoculate before I do anything like this with people, and I'm going to say to them, we're going to do some things, and I'm not going to talk much. I mean, I'm going to say these statements, but we're not going to discuss. And that's not because what you're experiencing isn't important or interesting. It's because we're letting your nervous system do its work. And my job is to give you these threads and to then stay out of your way. We can talk after we're done. And so if someone starts to talk, I'd say, great, we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's continue, because your nervous system is doing this work. Donnie, how would you do? How would you respond?
Right, it's almost exactly the same. I love to say to people, your healing is more important than my knowing.
I love that.
And the fact that I became a psychologist is because I'm a natural born voyeur and I want to know everything. But that is not a good enough reason for you to tell me right now, because we have this procedure that when we follow the procedure, it seems to be very, very helpful. So let's just stick to the procedure. Let's stick to the way that it's set up. And afterwards, let's figure out how it was for you. And if there's something that's still there that's important, then it's important. And then we'll talk about it.
Fabulous. Great.
But your healing is more important than my knowing.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to steal that. I'm stealing it.
Yeah, I stole it from Roger Solomon. You could steal it from me.
Excellent. Good. Separation from Roger. Okay,
there you
great.
Go.
So we do our suds. If suds have dropped below 3, we move on to closure. If suds are above 3, we move into our type 2 negative thoughts. And then we continue. And it's the procedure is exactly the same. But instead, you're going to read the statements that are in our type 2 box that have to do with our type 2 negative beliefs. We are offering the type 2 positive beliefs. Again, 1-minute increments, take a breath, another 1-minute increment about 5 times. So again, you did the best you could with the information you had at the time that you had then. You are a good enough parent, even if or when you feel depleted or overwhelmed. You can learn from this, you can adapt to this. You can sustain a safe and nurturing home for your baby, for your family in the midst of this upheaval. After you've done 5 increments, you check your suds. Same instructions. If the suds are still higher than 3, we move on and we do our second round of type 2 positive beliefs. If the suds have dropped, we move into closure. So if we need to do a second round, you say, I'm gonna say some new phrases. Notice the ones that most apply to you. And then we offer some of these. It takes time to learn how to do this. Whatever happened, happened. You can deal with this from this moment onward. Your attachment with your baby is flexible and resilient. You can be attached. You can know that you're attached from this moment onward, I might say also. Your best can be good enough for your baby, even when your best feels like it's below 100%. This idea of a good enough.
Especially when your best feels like it's below 100%.
Especially 100%, because it's always going to feel
it's always
when.
less.
Always. So we're going to modify that. This is how modifications happen.
Yeah.
Again, you check your
I only realized it when I heard it. I didn't know it when I read it.
And this is the other thing I want to say. When we break into breakout rooms, as you practice this, please do make notes of what you notice and what you find. This is how we make improvements, and we really appreciate all the input from you guys. So again, same instructions. If SUDS are less than 3, you move into closure. If SUDS are higher than 3, we do another round. 1-minute increments, take a breath 5 times. Your well-being is vital to the well-being of your family. Your needs are important. You can make choices for how to parent during this pandemic in ways that are best for your unique baby and your unique family. You can learn to care for yourself.
If you're noticing that what Gary did he does one time 5 minutes. When he does the alternate statements, he does it for a single minute and checks SUDS. He doesn't do it 5 times.
Okay, so it says about 5 minutes here on the program.
It doesn't on this one. If you look what it says right there, it says when the client is tapping for 1 minute, say the following sentence often, and then look right after. After about 1 minute, this is the first time or this is the second time? I'm confused. Okay, I might be confused. Go ahead. I'm confused.
It's okay. It's okay. There's a lot of rounds. And again,
that's true. And it doesn't matter.
Other way, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If you have less time, you can do less. It's okay. Right. It's only going to add. It's just, as we practice it and as we work it through, we figure out, oh yeah, this works better. And we like this. Okay. Right. You're going to take another SUDS. I want to make sure we have lots of time so that we can do the demo and then your practice. And then the final round here would be, again, if SUDS are still higher than 3, you did the best you could with the information you had. You can learn from this. This is the statements we used earlier on. After about a minute, take a breath, let it go. And then we are ultimately going to get to SUDS. At this point, no matter what the SUDS rating we're going to go into closure. So by this point, people are generally far more grounded and relaxed. They've woven in the statements that resonate most with them. They may have supplied some. Very often people have this, oh, right, oh yeah. And it weaves in. So
I want to make a point. About this. This is a question that came up in one of these sessions that I did on Monday night, I think it was. And somebody at the end asked, hold on, can't this be used for evil intent of trying to get people to do things that they don't want to do or believe things they don't want to believe? And our sense is that not only can you not do that, but some of the adaptations and the changes that happened when Gary was developing this is that if he said things to people that didn't fit as their real truth, it's like they blew up at him. And it just because it's not hypnotic. Because it's not hypnotic. So like for instance,
and even with hypnosis, you really also can't get people to do things that don't fit.
Right. But people are in a much more suggestible space when they're in hypnosis, and they're not suggestible here. That's not what's happening.
Right.
So when he was saying in that calm voice, he was saying, you can follow for instance, you could follow the instructions of the CDC. There are some people that were pissed off at the CDC. And as soon as he said that, he said, no, I can't trust them. And it just, it backfired. So it was just, our sense is that this works the same way a cognitive interweave works for the EMDR people, that if it is true, it will resonate. If it is not, it won't. So the likelihood of this being able to be used in that way is quite unlikely, actually.
Yes.
And I wouldn't hesitate. I mean, if a client in between when they're breathing and they say to you, there was one of those that really, it's bringing, it's not working for me. Cross it out.
Don't use it.
It's going to get in the way of and it really is like EMDR, for the people who are familiar with EMDR, this idea of it being like an interweave. An interweave has to be using the truthful information that's already being processed, and then you're trying to slightly kind of support more adaptiveness in it.
Right.
And so you're just sort of like a dialectical thinking kind of reframe. You're being able to kind of make a more flexibility, more adaptability in that already that belief.
But even if we're not talking cognitive interweaves, when we're talking about positive cognitions, they must be true and positive. If it's not true, it's not going to work. For instance, if it's a wish, it's not going to work.
Right.
My baby will be okay no matter what is not going to work.
No, and
no matter how nicely you say it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's why the language of could be, you can learn, you could consider is so important, because even if what we're doing is we're helping somebody to consider that they are on a developmental track, and that now this developmental track has all kinds of obstacles that most people, anybody from anywhere from 3 months before or 4 months before now never had to deal with, they can still learn.
Right.
So in our closure here, we are reinforcing these positive thoughts once again, and we're also going to show them and then give them a handout that they can then take with them to do this as potentially a regular practice for themselves, or when they need it. So notice, and as the clinician, you're going to write down and think, here are the positive thoughts that were helpful to the client, and here are some that came up during the process that we just went through. Say to them, let's write these down, and use them with tapping as a regular practice, and anytime you need or want it. And that's going to be in that worksheet that you're going to go over with the client, the second document that they then can take with them. I've had clients say, could I have a recording of you saying those things? And so we've woven that into our instructions here. You could ask them, would you like a recording of me saying these? And you can take this with you, and then sometimes you can say this about yourself, and sometimes you can listen to me saying it to you. And then you can record it as you're doing it with them. So what we're now going to do is we want the client to say the statements along with you, and especially mark the ones that are resonant and helpful. And then, so we have some space here. You can add, and we have that list that's attached at the back. And then we move from I'm saying out loud to you to them saying, I can be in reasonable control of what I can be in control of. I can learn to deal with this, etc. And again, we do the same with our positive type 2 thoughts. I did the best I could. I'm a good enough parent during the pandemic, even when I feel depleted and overwhelmed, etc. And let them know, and you will notice if the distress continues, to find somebody who can help them, because past trauma then is intruding, and that this is not enough to stabilize and contain. We're trying to install some good shock absorption here, and it just may be that can happen after some old trauma is processed. And then we want to know, can we check in with you? Because that's always nice to do, helpful to do. Here is our list as of right now, which I anticipate is going to expand. We've divided them into our type 1 and type 2. So these are here. You're welcome to use them and share them and so forth. So now I'm just going to very quickly show you the handout you also would have gotten, hold on a minute, for the client to take home. And it's why this doesn't want to, here we go. And I just want to show you the pictures, because I'm so grateful to this friend who gave us pictures. So we're giving them instructions. The instructions are very much the same, but this is for them to take with them so they can review how you do the butterfly tap, how you tap on your legs. All right. Again, a reminder, you might want to ask them about a recording when you're going over this with them.
Yeah. And one idea is you can have them take it home, and as a homework, they're finding the beliefs that feel most helpful to them. And then the next session, you say it to them and you record while you're doing, so you're doing the exercise again and as a follow-up to the first time, and recording it, and then take that home with them after that.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, if we're going to end up having people like ambulance workers, just walking in and using these things, they're not going to have the follow-up. And what's amazing is that this seems to be robust enough that it seems to work even in a one-time step out. Give people resources if they need it. That's just being professionally responsible. But it's not necessarily absolutely necessary to have a follow-up in order for this to work.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, let me just quickly show you. I just wanted you to see that at the end of here, we have some gorgeous pictures of the tapping while very pregnant. I thought the ball,
I love the
was
ball.
a great addition. And she's got some also where she's sitting on the floor. And you see the hook? You see how here she's got her thumbs hooked? And these are all here. Lower on the arm. And notice you're not tapping really on the knees. We're really tapping on the thighs because that's really what's comfortable. So it doesn't have to be knees. It's really that we're just hitting tops of legs. All right, okay.
Yep.
I want to move, and I love these. I want to move into the demo. And
Yep.
we'd like to ask for a volunteer, and two requirements for a volunteer. One is that you are comfortable being recorded because this will be shared and posted online. And second, that you do have some perinatal related COVID concern as well, so that we can demonstrate some of that. So if somebody would step forward, that would be fabulous. Anybody volunteering? Ah, we got a volunteer. All right. So we've got Ambrosia. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah, but give yourself, you can turn on your camera. Where are you? There you are. Hello. All right, so I'm going to
quarantine here.
Totally, man. We are all there. We are all there. Let me see if I can do side-by-side mode here.
Great. Thank you for volunteering and doing this shared vulnerability with me, because I'll be
yeah.
We'll just go with it. Yeah. How many weeks pregnant are you, Ambrosia?
I'm 22 weeks right now.
Yeah.
To the day.
To the day. Congratulations. So over halfway, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I think I shared in the chat, I had an infant loss 2 years ago. So this is especially exacerbating the COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And, doing this work, Mara and I were just talking about like how much we get into this work because we ourselves, so many people who are in the perinatal treatment population have their own stuff, like this transition to parenthood, the things that have happened in parenthood. And so, we're both teaching this to teach to other people, but we also need it for ourselves so much. And I've personally also benefited from this. So I'm so grateful that you're joining. So we're gonna go through the script, and the good thing about this is I'm just reading. So as Donnie said, just read. So we're gonna go. Okay. So Ambrosia, I understand that you've been having some stuff coming up around COVID. Can you just tell me briefly a little bit about what's been showing up the most for you recently?
I'm just worried about catching COVID in general, and specifically causing any death to the baby. I have to go to work tomorrow. I work for the VA actually during the day with homeless veterans, and we get some opportunities to telehealth, but tomorrow specifically I have to go to work. Okay. And cover the clinic. So I'm worried about catching it at work tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so I'm really glad that we're doing this right now. And I want to share with you this procedure that has helped a lot of people, specifically other parents and even pregnant moms around this. And I think it could be really helpful for you. You can do it by tapping on your shoulders or your knees. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of it, and then we're going to see which one feels better for you, okay? So we'll start with the tapping of the shoulders. So you just find a comfortable way of crossing across, and then, if you want, you can either hook your fingers together so that they rest kind of right in the middle of your chest, or you can leave them separate if you need a little more room. Just feeling that back and forth. And now we can try another way, which is with the knees. And so I'll show you, you can bring your hands to your knees, and you can either cup them sort of right in front of your kneecaps and tap, Or if it's more comfortable, you can put them on the top or the sides. Just noticing it. One feels more comfortable.
I might do the butterfly tapping. I'm a little junky, so I'm like, I feel like I don't feel anything. There's too much.
I don't get a lot of it.
my legs.
Yeah.
So this might be more impactful.
Yeah, and it's such a heart-centered. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we're gonna go with this one, and we're gonna tap for a little second and feel it again, what that feels like. And then we can pause. And I want you to know that as we're doing this together, if at any point you feel like you need to stop, you can either say stop or you could put your hand up. Is there one that feels more natural to you?
I might do this.
Yeah, just putting your hand up. And we would just stop and check in, and that would be that. So going back to this, the concerns that you brought up about work and tomorrow, what are some of the negative thoughts that are showing up for you most around this right now? And let me give you some just quick examples real quick of just some of the ones that are that people say, like, I can't handle this, I'm not in control, I feel helpless, or I'm helpless.
Maybe the lack of control.
Yeah, I'm not in control.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes there can be a different sort of side of that. Some other thoughts that people have are it's like my fault, I'm not important, or I'm failing, or I should have known better. Any of those?
Kind of, it's my fault.
Okay.
I had a placental abruption with the last baby, and I had an emergency C-section, and she didn't make it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I just want to take a moment to pause and check in with Mara and Donnie, because it sounds like that, we talked about the type 1 and the type 2. And it sounds like maybe somewhere in the type 2, there's some old traumatic loss that's in that. And I want to ask Amara and Donnie about how to hold that.
Right. This is one of those cases where we're not going there, not because it's not important,
right,
but because right now we have to deal with now.
And so
if that becomes important, then we can go back and deal with that. But right now, we're dealing with right now.
Exactly. I have to go to work tomorrow.
That is exactly, you took the words right out right now. Exactly.
It's now toward future, now toward future, now toward future. That other information is very important, but it's not important right this minute.
Okay. Does that feel okay?
Yes.
In terms of, okay. That's exactly what I would do.
Yeah. Okay. So, so you said one of the main thoughts that's coming up is I'm not in control. I'm helpless.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And when you say that negative thought right now, that I'm not in control, I'm helpless, what feelings show up for you?
I think a lot of sadness, because I'm not in control of it. So maybe inadequacy. I know that's not a feeling, but maybe kind of goes with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I should be able to control this. Or that.
Yeah, and the most is fear.
The fear, yeah.
The fear of what's going to happen if it happens.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. And so, as you feel those or notice those feelings right now, what would you say your level of disturbance is, with 0 being none at all or neutral, and 10 being like the worst that you can imagine?
As you guys can probably tell, I'm pretty activated talking about it now. So probably like a 9, 8 or 9.
Yeah. Okay. An 8 or a 9. Yep. Okay. So what we're doing with this, Ambrosia, is we're really just trying to help you kind of cultivate and embed some shock absorption as you go into this situation tomorrow. And so we're not, we're really just letting, we're listening, we're integrating. So what we'll start doing is I want to invite you to bring your hands up, and we're going to do that fast tapping. And all you do is listen to what I'm saying, the phrases that I'm saying.
What do you want me to do with my eyes? Do you want me to look away, look down, close them?
Yeah, it's up to you. You can close your eyes, but if you feel like that's making it harder to stay present, then you may want to open them.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll just begin. You can be in reasonable control of what you can be in control of. You can learn to deal with this. An attachment to your baby is flexible and resilient. You and your baby are connected no matter what happens. You can learn to have options within the framework you are now living. You are part of the baby's healthcare team. You can learn to manage the uncertainty involved in this pandemic, just as you are learning to be a new parent. And now take a breath and stop tapping and letting it go. And now we'll resume the tapping again. You can be in reasonable control of what you can be in control of. You can learn to deal with this. An attachment to your baby is flexible and resilient. You and your baby are connected no matter what. You're part of your baby's healthcare team. And you can learn to manage the uncertainty involved in this pandemic, just as you've learned to do as you become a new parent. And take a breath, letting it go. And we'll start the tapping again. You can be in reasonable control of what you can be in control of. You can learn to deal with this. An attachment to your baby is flexible and resilient. You and your baby are connected no matter what happens. You can learn to have options within the framework you are now living. You are part of your baby's healthcare team. And you can learn to manage the uncertainty involved in this pandemic, just as you've learned to do so as you become a new parent. Take a breath, letting it go. And we'll go again. You can be in reasonable control of what you can be in control of. You can learn to deal with this. An attachment to your baby is flexible and resilient. You and your baby are connected no matter what happens. You can learn to have options within the framework you're now living in. You are part of your baby's healthcare team. You can learn to manage the uncertainty involved in this pandemic, just as you're learning to as you become a new parent. And take a breath and let go. We'll do one more time, okay? You can be in reasonable control of what you can be in control of. You can learn to deal with this. An attachment to your baby is flexible and resilient. You and your baby are connected no matter what happens. You can learn to have options within the framework you are now living. You are part of your baby's healthcare team. You can learn to manage the uncertainty involved in this pandemic, just as you are learning to as you become a new parent. Now take a breath and let go. Yeah. And so as we check in, I'm wondering, where do you notice your level of distress, with 0 being not at all or neutral and 10 being the worst that you can imagine?
Like 2 or 3.
Yeah. So notice that. Yeah. Okay. Great. So yeah, I see the smile coming back. Yeah, on your face. That's awesome. So I want to check in with you. Are there certain ones of those positive thoughts that really resonated with you, that felt really helpful and calming?
I think the first 2,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what order. I have to probably look at it again. I have another computer I was kind of looking at. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I was kind of scrolling back through it. I know the first 2, and I know they were towards the end.
So there was, you can be in reasonable control of what you can be in control of, and I can learn to deal with this attachment to my baby, or to your baby, as flexible and resilient.
Yes.
And the last one was the uncertainty piece of the pandemic.
Yeah, the last 2. So the first 2 and the last 2.
Yeah. Okay. So let's write those down right now. Do you have a piece of paper in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to write them down too. So I'll write them down so we would know in the future that we would both hold on to that, and we can do that in session again if we need. And then we'd maybe want to switch that for you so that it comes from I. So I can be in reasonable control of what I can be in control of. I can learn to deal with this attachment to my baby is flexible, resilient, and part of my baby's healthcare team. And I can learn to manage the uncertainty involved in this pandemic, just as I'm learning to in my new role as a parent. And I'm also going to provide you with a worksheet, and it has a bunch of other positive beliefs that we could take a look at, and you can take a look at later and add to that list. Yeah. And so do you have that list in front of you right now, the positive guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any others that stick out to you? And especially this, since it was the type 1, like the safety stuff.
Let's see. The big list at the end? Is that the one you mean?
Yeah, that one.
For type 1. Okay. I think number 1 kind of goes with what was already on there. I can be in reasonable control of what I can be in control of.
Yeah.
Let's see. I do the best I can to protect my baby and family.
Right. Yeah.
I like that one. And let's see. The second to last, maybe, it says I can find moments of joy during this pandemic and create moments to feel my difficult feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I can take a time out. I can sit with my fears and my anxieties, and also, allow myself moments of presence with whatever's the hard parts. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's add those to the list. And what's really, what's cool about this is that you can do this whenever you need.
Yeah.
Is there a time that you can imagine that this would be really helpful to do even after session?
I think for me, during the night before bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When all that stuff's popping up.
Right. Your brain's going wild. I was like, wait, what about this? So I think that this can be like a good resource for regulation, like before bed to get to sleep.
Right. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and if we were, working together repeatedly, I would maybe offer to, record it, and that way you could have it, because it's easier sometimes for people to do this with a recording. And then, we'd check in the next session around what was helpful, and keep it evolving from there. So, yeah. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for not laughing at my hair.
Oh, Fantastic. All right. Great. And by the way, that was one round. One round. So it really can show you the power of this intervention, even when we know that there's old, super important stuff back there still. And so, you know, in a session when there's more time, you could do more positives. You could continue if you wanted to, you know, because it could bolster. Donnie, have you done that? Have you seen that?
Right. I would say that working on the past will be much easier now.
Oh, yes.
Because when somebody has something sitting right in front of their nose like this, you can't work on the past anyway.
Right. Right.
By being able to be relatively feeling safe enough in the present and in control enough and having enough of an ability to deal with what's happening now, then the mind is able to actually process old material.
Yeah.
That's from the EMDR perspective. You know, if somebody cannot achieve safe place, we don't go on to process it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right? So
and
there has to be 1 foot here, 1 foot there, and that wouldn't be happening. Yeah.
Exactly. And Ambrosia, really, I want to just echo what everyone in the chat is saying, which is thank you for coming forward in this group of people who we didn't even really get to meet each other, to be vulnerable and open, to having this experience, and helping us to learn. And so glad that you did, and that it was helpful, and that you can continue to use it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We learn by doing, right?
We do.
Can I read one of the chats that should be said out loud and everybody should hear it?
Yes.
Where was it? I'm trying to see exactly where it was. It was something to the effect of, "Thank you, Ambrosia, and your hair is beautiful."
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay.
I told you this group had a good sense of humor too.
That was not a sense of humor. That's true. Sorry.
It's also true, but sharing it.
Yes. Okay.
Does anybody have any quick questions before we go into your breakout rooms? And you can speak out loud. You can
Linda,
go ahead and
Linda,
if you have a question, don't leave before practicing unless you have to. Linda has a question. Yes.
I had a question. It was really super powerful, but I had to kind of. So, Erin, when you were like talking freely, you were sounding super like empathetic and. Oh, I forgot.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah. And then when you were reading the statements, you were like, it was like obviously a text, and I was wondering if it's supposed to be like almost monotonous, or if you're supposed to put a little like authenticity, like you can be like, you know, like really, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I would ask Ambrosia how it felt for her when she was hearing it. She was the one on the receiving end. And that's like a really important piece of this, because doing it in a measured way, it means that Erin is putting less of herself in and more of the thoughts. But I'm actually interested in hearing how Ambrosia felt, if it felt empathetic and caring and whatever. Ambrosia, could you relate to that?
I thought she read it in a way that was natural, so I was able to focus on the statements. I think if you're natural with it, it's okay. So I didn't have any issues with it, even when there was like a little disruption, because you are reading, but I didn't pay attention so much to that, to be honest. I was really trying to focus on the statements themselves. So I was okay with it.
And remember, as you know, this is such a new procedure even to all of us here who've been working on this intensively for quite a while now. As you use this, these statements will also become more natural to you to say. You will phrase them in ways that feel natural to you, and you'll know your client, if this is somebody you've been working with as well, to modify and adapt them as well. So, as Donnie said, we don't want to put too much of ourselves in there. We want this to be able to be received and integrated by our client, and yet there's a way, as we get more familiar, for it to sound more natural. The idea is not that it should sound robotic, Linda, if that was what you were wondering. It's not that. It's really, I think, just that as this becomes more comfortable and familiar to all of us, and we know how, which adaptations given the particular perinatal situation, to emphasize it's smoother.
So I'm actually having...
The other part of the question was like, I noticed the first time was like really super, super slow.
Yes.
Is that intentional to like get them like internalize the
So I've been doing it slower, and then I got a chat from Donnie saying, "Speed up! You're not supposed to."
Yeah, I was going to do the same. Right. I tend to go faster also. I say them a few times.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yep.
Because part of the idea here is that you're not allowing the standard processing that we do in EMDR that goes back into older stuff and other associations. We're kind of blocking that from happening, even though the person has access to the current disturbance. They've accessed the current disturbance, and we're just going boom, 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 boom.
We're overloading working memory.
Right, and there's actually may even be a value to that almost monotonic way of doing it. Don't forget that emotional expression activates emotions, not necessarily the emotions that we were planning on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Because if she starts putting in a very caring and that emotional tone, it could have been Ambrosia would have started tearing and crying, and she would have gone into that too vulnerable space and actually not been hearing the words, but hearing the emotional content.
We don't want to get evocative, but it is okay to read it in a way that actually conveys meaning, you know?
Right, right. You're allowed to care. You're allowed to care. You're allowed to care.
But you're not churning. We're not looking to churn.
Right.
Thank you so much.
I mean, we therapists have this tendency to be very feeling and to be so caring. And right here, if we do that, we're probably going to cause problems.
I was thinking if my therapist did this with me, like, you know, and was over a little bit too overly, I may start feeling responsible for her. You know, I may start feeling like, oh,
that's a good point.
Especially in the perinatal phase.
Yes.
Because you're there, you're supposed to be caring. Yeah. And the last thing we want the client to do is start having to care for us.
Yeah, right. Good. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So how often do they abort? You know, how often does it happen that somebody puts a stop sign up and says, I can't do this?
I haven't had it happen yet.
I haven't had it happen either.
But yeah.
I've had people that couldn't relate to it, and they were just too associative, and they were all over the place. They didn't even give me the stop signal, but this procedure clearly wasn't appropriate for them. Separate issue. But I haven't had a single person yet give me a stop signal. That's because they had to go run to the bathroom.
Good to know.
Yeah, comments, observations, how'd it go?
Maybe before that.
Yes.
Mara, I should tell people that I developed the early trauma protocol in the late 90s for EMDR, and that's my connection to all the wonderful things that you're doing.
People don't know who Katie O'Shea is here. Katie's done some phenomenal contributions for decades, and glad that you are here. And
so everything that we're doing here is built on your work.
Well, yeah. Well, and all the perinatal work that I do, you know, draws
and so
on.
Everything that we're doing in general is built on your work. I mean, you're one of our heroes.
You got to start emphasizing that this is the way to do the butterfly hug.
Right. The only reason I don't emphasize that is because Francine didn't like it. That's what I was told.
Oh, no. Linda's okay.
The reason she didn't like it is because she didn't want to get into all the stuff of meridians.
Well, we can just get into the vagus nerve. That's enough.
I'm good with that.
I think that's reasonable. And that's
so
what I
teach it both ways. I teach it both ways.
So can you give us a little bit more information then about the butterfly tap and hold? I'd love to hear a short explanation from you.
Yeah. You mean me?
Yeah,
Katie, you.
Well, this comes from, I've been doing it since the mid-90s when it was,
sure.
You know, as if
when
people
started.
I got trained in 1990 and been part of the training team since 94. So Bruce Lipton, everybody needs to know about Bruce Lipton. He wrote The Biology of Belief. He's a cellular biologist. And he actually was talking about the energy methods, and that the reason that they tap here is because they're stimulating, and I'm blanking the name of the vagus nerve comes down here too, but our system that gets, somebody give it to me, the name of our system that gets rid of everything. That's a
lymphatic.
Lymph thing. Thank you, Mara. Yes, the lymph system. So that if you do this here, we're actually stimulating biologically the lymph system. And it carries stuff out of the body. One of his you know, and it could.
Sorry about that. That was my fault.
You know.
Sorry, that was my fault.
So Katie, when we do this, we're hitting a vagus stabilization point, or
stimulating, we're accessing the vagus nerve, which is connected to all of our organs, and we're stimulating that lymph system to biologically carry out what we don't need. And I think, I mean, I still use, after all these years, almost 50 years in the profession, the EMDR, and I'm not retiring because I think all of us really need to review the early time periods. And what I see in all of my same age people at 74, all kinds of physical stuff that is a consequence of this. And the other thing is tapping on just above the knees, the side of the leg. When I had chronic fatigue syndrome that didn't clear up until I got back to my near-death experience in my birth, which is what got me oriented to the
and that we talk about in a webinar we did about a month ago.
Yes,
plug for that. Go ahead.
But I had these pains down the outside of my leg no matter what I did. And then in exploring all of it, learned that there's a major meridian that runs down the outside of the leg. And so I think if we can tap into the biology, that we're, you know, I want to optimize everything.
Yes.
So it's hooking the thumbs and putting it right at the solar plexus then?
Yeah, it's just
the solar plexus is down here.
It's
it's like that notch here.
Okay. Yeah, right, touch the notch. Then it touches that indentation that you have right under the collarbone.
Thank you.
Right, and that spot right there, for anybody that studies deeply things for the martial arts, there's lots of stuff, right? That's
and yoga.
Right over here. Yoga, yeah.
And the other
so
thing.
Katie, I'm also a Tai Chi instructor. So for me, you know, I was bothered by the fact that Francine didn't like that. So I teach it both ways.
Good. But I don't give alternatives, Donnie, because I think that we need to be the guide. That's how I see myself. My role is the guide. If I'm climbing a mountain, I want a guide that knows the best way to the top. And so I don't give alternatives that I don't think are the optimal route. So I say.
So from now on, when I'm teaching it, I'm going to quote you. How's that?
I think that's reasonable.
I'll talk to
Katie told me that we should do it this way. And you all can say that now.
That's right, because Katie is one of the forefathers or foremothers.
Katie is a perinatal diva. So, right? You know perinatal divas. That's our group. That's our,
Can I be one too?
Yes. You can be one. Paul is already one. Paul Miller is already one.
There you go. That's right. That's right.
That's what we call people who do our trainings.
Got it.
Touchstone.
Mara, so I'm gonna have to, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to leave in the next 10 minutes because my childcare is leaving, as most of you know. That's
our balance.
That's what makes it work, right? So if anybody has any like reactions to also, I mean, of doing this, of anything that came up during the earlier part of the training, and know that we will be accepting this feedback as this is just an evolving document. But initial reactions anybody has.
Jump on in. Unmute and jump in.
And I'm sorry, I need to leave. I have people scheduled in just a few minutes. So
thank you for coming.
Katie.
Yes.
Wonderful meeting you finally.
I'll know you later.
So I was working with Ambrosia, and I just wrote her in the chat. she disappeared again. She had a really good balance between sounding sincere and sounding like kind of, I don't know the word is objective or not over emotional or like,
Right.
like I really believed her and like, it made me feel
That's
like
great.
I believed in myself. Like, you know, my situation is I have a newborn in Chicago grandson, and here I am in Israel. And he was born 5 weeks early, and nobody's allowed to go there, and it's just the two of them. And they're doing great, but I'm afraid they'll like get overwhelmed at some point. And that's my focus. So Ambrosia was like really, yeah.
Right.
Really
Wonderful.
So Linda, when you do come to visit in Israel, you're welcome to stop by, make you a nice cup of coffee.
Oh, I'm in Israel,
Great
Daddy.
coffee.
Careful. I'm in Israel. I'm in Rehovot.
Oh,
you
you're
are?
already
So
in
come
Israel.
visit.
My kids are in Chicago. I'm in Rehovot.
Oh, so it's the other way around.
Okay.
It's the other way. I misheard what you
Oh,
said.
they're in Chicago. I'm in
Got it.
Chicago. That's
So
funny.
why don't I know you yet? Linda, why don't I know you yet?
We'll have to figure that out.
We'll have to figure that out. Okay.
Good. Any
But
other
thank you,
comments,
thank you,
questions,
Georgia.
observations?
You're still welcome to Yerushalayim for a cup of coffee. That's either way.
Yeah, now you guys are allowed to move around now. I'm still not
A little
allowed to
bit.
move around. We still have shelter in place. She was very patient. Well, and this is it, right? We're all, Berta says you're very patient. This is.
Yeah.
I didn't need to be patient. She was
Yeah.
great. You were
Yeah.
great. You were great.
Yeah.
Good.
So I want to reiterate what was said earlier about the robustness of this type of an intervention. It is so robust that you can make 1,000 mistakes and it still works.
Yes. And people really do handle you reading. I know somebody said you don't like to break eye contact. Just know that our clients really do tolerate that very well. And I think, oh, your dog barked at her. You can interweave the dog. It's ultimately going to be your voice anyway.
Right.
And when you say these things, they get woven in together. It doesn't need to be perfect. There is no perfect.
It helps me with the EMDR and with this type of scripted protocol to just really remind myself that I am trusting that their brain is the agent of change here.
Yes.
Right.
And that I am, it's like they are doing a lot with a little that I'm giving them. And it's really it helps me check myself too a little bit, like, and I think there's a beautiful balance that each of us can find between having these phrases feel authentic and feel caring, but also kind of trusting that the phrases themselves just being said have such power for the client to hold on to. So
I have a feeling if we would have Siri reading them, it would still work.
I think that's true because it gets translated internally.
Yeah.
Right? Like we worry so much, and I think often appropriately, about getting things exactly right, but we forget that people really are, traumatized people especially, not even not exclusively, but are resilient. And we filter out all kinds of stuff all the time and take in what's adaptive and useful.
Yeah. The brain likes to process.
Yes.
It likes to move. It doesn't like to stay stuck. So when it has something that gives it a foothold, it moves.
It moves. It really does. It does. And we're repeating, don't forget. We're repeating things over and over again. So if you didn't like the intonation the first time, change it the second time. Again, your client's brain is going to take it in. It's going to anyway translate it for themselves because it's getting integrated for themselves.
I remember, just as an example, I wouldn't say the same thing for this procedure, but for general EMDR treatment, I remember like at my first few years, I was so excited that I was making up all kinds of new, exciting ways of doing everything. And then when I started training as a consultant, I realized that I really, really needed to try to focus in on what the standard procedures were because, that's what I'm supposed to be teaching now. And I was a little bit shocked, to say the least, to find that my success rate went up when I dropped all of my brilliance and started just following the damn protocol.
It's really humbling. It's really humbling. And really this thing about staying out of the way, I just got to say, it really is foundational.
It is.
Our clients'
Hi, Karen.
internal resources are always going to be better, or their adaptive processing and connections are always going to be more organic, by definition for them.
Right.
Than anything any brilliant thing we can come up with. Of course, please ask a question. Karen,
Yes.
turn on sound.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you. So I'm just thinking about this procedure, which is just really brilliant in its brevity and its effectiveness. And I'm thinking, first of all, in terms of how I'm asking, right? Because to me, it seems like this is something that it was designed for the perinatal population, but it's something that it sounds like could be tailored to anyone experiencing any fears around COVID, which makes me think that this is a procedure that could probably be tailored to really any ongoing fear or any ongoing.
Okay, so let me give you the history. Let me give you the history of this.
Yes.
This started off with Gary Quinn going to like minutes to hours after terrorist attacks or after horrible car accidents, and on scene trying to figure out how can he work with somebody that's right here in silent terror. And he developed what he called the emergency room procedure, which is the beginning of what we're looking at right now. After that, he developed that into a procedure that he was able to teach to first responders that had little or no experience as mental health professionals. And that was the ISP, the immediate stabilization procedure. Now, all of those were based on something that happened minutes to hours ago that is actually over. So the focus was a little bit different, but he took the basic mechanisms that was working there and he applied it to something that is present toward future. And that's how he developed this, and he did this over the past 2 months. And it's been developing, and he's taught this to thousands of people all over the world. It's been translated already into, I think, 10 different languages. So then when Mara went through this, she started using this with the perinatal population and found herself just adapting it just on the fly. And then we got in touch and we said, okay, why don't we just do this for real?
Let's do it for real. And because I teach EMDR and perinatal, mental health and perinatal trauma, and these domains around identity, around affect regulation and what comes up, and relationship stuff are particular and have some unique themes in the perinatal postpartum period. Perinatal includes postpartum, that make it more accessible in thinking thematically like that. But I think you're absolutely right, Karen. I think that certainly there are many people for whom the original procedure is exactly what they need.
Right.
And they will apply it internally.
Yeah.
And then I would think, somebody, in the middle of a cancer treatment, you might adapt again.
Yeah. So anyone, first of all, I would say anybody who's taken this training and downloads the COVID procedure from Gary, the training that you got now will allow you to do that. You'll just see it's a slightly different script.
Right.
And
we streamlined it and tried to format it.
Right. It basically has the same kind of script. We reformatted it, but it's the same script minus the pieces that are specifically perinatal.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And about thank you. It's really amazing how versatile and how effective it is.
Yeah.
And about the identity piece, right? Because when you're working with a perinatal population, someone who's becoming has just become a mother, having to integrate that new aspect of their identity. But I'm thinking even the other way around, right? Like when you said this was designed for people post-trauma, post-terror attack. So for a lot of people, I think, who experience a severe trauma like that, having to deal with the identity, having to kind of recognize that doesn't become their identity.
Yes.
So what was interesting is that when you catch it that early, the implications.
Sexual abuse. I'm not of sexual.
Right. I am not my trauma.
Right.
So the implications of what was happening is because it was being caught so early, it was kind of stopping it from moving toward trauma storage. It wasn't stored in the first place.
Right, because you're getting in there early in that case. One thing I would say, Karen, and this is as a mom of babies who they're not babies, they're baby adults now. They're almost 24, my twins.
I'm still my mommy's baby.
There you go. But spent, I spent 6.5 weeks in the hospital on bed rest, and they spent 10 weeks in the NICU. The identity piece is complicated. You certainly don't want someone to integrate, I'm permanently damaged. Mm-hmm. And yet I would say, and this is a little more nuanced, and this is not necessarily specific only to this procedure, but I am a NICU mom, and that is an important part of my identity, and it's adaptive. Right? So that when I think about, when people started talking about social isolation or staying away from each other, I understood it on a visceral level very, very quickly, because staying away as a protective action is so now intrinsic, having spent all that time in a NICU, right? That's good, right? It's not a trauma response anymore. It's a woven in, made meaning kind of experience.
So when Nietzsche said, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger," he was kind of right. It was whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger, unless it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well,
and then you need EMDR.
If you can make meaning of it, right? If you can transform it, if you can translate, if you can digest it and integrate it, it sure does. It makes you different, certainly. It transforms you in it as it should.
Yeah, the transition from victim to victor, right?
Yes, and as a different sort of parent to a different sort of baby, different sort of experience, and not as a negative, not as a less than, but as an evolution.
Yeah. Thank you.
Guys, I am in favor of closing this up. I have had a slightly long day. Here in Israel, it's now
8 hours ahead of me.
Yes, it's now 9:25. I didn't get a chance to say this to everybody, but I'd like to say, at least to the people that stuck it out till the end, thank you for joining us. It is, first of all, it's a pleasure teaching, and especially a group of people that are obviously so interested in learning. So thank you all for your participation, and I understand that